The bitter December wind cut through the subway station like a blade, but it wasn't the cold that made Emma's hands tremble as she clutched the frayed edges of her coat. It was shame, the kind that settles deep in your chest and makes you want to disappear into the cracked tile walls. She'd worn this same threadbare coat for 3 winters now, its once navy fabric faded to a mottled gray, the lining torn and hanging loose near the hem. As she stood on the platform waiting for the last train home, she caught her reflection in the dirty window, a 28-year-old woman who looked like she was wearing her grandmother's cast-offs. And tonight, of all nights, she had to run into him. Emma had met Daniel 6 weeks ago at the community center where she volunteered on Tuesday evenings. He'd walked in during the dinner service, not as a volunteer but as someone seeking a warm meal, though his clean jacket and kind eyes suggested temporary hardship rather than chronic struggle. They'd talked while she ladled soup, discovering a shared love of old movies and terrible puns. He'd come back the next week, and the next, and gradually their conversation stretched longer. Last Tuesday, he'd asked if she'd like to meet for coffee sometime. She'd said yes before her brain could catalog all the reasons she shouldn't. They'd exchanged numbers. He'd texted her just this morning, something funny about a dog he'd seen wearing boots. She'd laughed alone in her apartment, that tiny studio with the radiator that only worked when it felt like it, and allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, that someone like Daniel could see past her circumstances to who she really was. But now, as she heard footsteps behind her and turned to see him walking down the subway stairs, all those fragile hopes crumbled. He was wearing a nice wool coat, charcoal gray and obviously warm, the kind that probably cost more than her entire month's grocery budget. He looked handsome and put together, like someone with a real life, a real future. And here she was in this pathetic excuse for a coat, the sleeves so worn they'd started to shine, a button missing near the collar that she'd been meaning to replace for months. Emma. His face lit up with genuine surprise and pleasure. Hey, what are you doing here? She wanted to run, actually considered it, but the train was coming, and there was nowhere to go. Just heading home, she managed, wrapping her arms around herself in a futile attempt to hide the coat's condition. The gesture only made it worse, pulling the torn lining into view. Daniel's eyes flickered to her coat, and Emma felt something inside her wither. This was it, the moment when reality crashed through whatever fantasy they'd been building. She'd seen this look before, that flash of recognition when someone registers your poverty, followed by the careful retreat, the polite distance. That coat looks like it's seen some winters, he said, and Emma's heart sank. Yeah, she whispered, looking down at the platform. It's pretty old. Here it comes, she thought. The excuse. The sudden remembering of some other obligation. The slow fade that people do when they realize you're not quite what they thought. She'd been through this before. After her mother's medical bills had drained everything, after she'd dropped out of college to work double shifts at the diner, after she'd learned that poverty has a smell and a look that people can detect like smoke. The train roared into the station, its brakes squealing. Emma prepared herself for the polite goodbye, the nice seeing you, that would be the beginning of the end. But Daniel didn't say goodbye. Instead, he did something she never expected. He shrugged off his beautiful charcoal coat and held it out to her. Here, he said simply. Take this. Emma stared at him. What? No, I can't. You're shivering, he said, and his voice was so matter-of-fact, so absent of pity, that it almost hurt more than rejection would have. Please, I'm serious. But you'll be cold, she protested, even as her body ached for the warmth she could see emanating from that coat. I'll be fine. I'm only going a few stops. Come on, Emma. Let me do this. The train doors opened, and other passengers pushed past them. Emma looked at Daniel's face, really looked, and saw no judgment there. No condescension. No performance of charity. Just genuine concern, the kind that makes you feel seen rather than scrutinized. I don't understand, she said, her voice cracking. Why would you? He stepped closer, and gently draped the coat over her shoulders. It was heavy and warm and smelled like cedar and something clean. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Because it's cold, Daniel said quietly. And because that's what people should do for each other. No big mystery. They stood there on the platform as other passengers boarded, Emma wrapped in his coat, Daniel in just his sweater. She wanted to explain everything, about her mother's cancer, about the bills, about working 60 hours a week and still barely making rent, about how this coat had been from a thrift store and it was the best she could afford. But the words wouldn't come. "Emma," Daniel said, and something in his tone made her look up. "Can I tell you something? That first night at the community center, I wasn't there for a meal because I was hungry. I was there because I'd just moved to the city and didn't know anyone. I was lonely. You made me feel welcome when you didn't have to. You gave me your time and your attention like it mattered. Like I mattered. That's worth more than any coat." The train started beeping its warning. "We should board," he said, gesturing to the doors. They got on together and found seats in the half-empty car. Emma kept his coat wrapped around her, and Daniel sat next to her in his sweater, seemingly unbothered by the cold. Other passengers glanced at them, this odd pair, the woman bundled in a man's expensive coat, the man in just his shirt sleeves, but Daniel didn't seem to notice. "My mom was sick for a long time," Emma found herself saying, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "She died 2 years ago. The bills, they took everything. I'm still paying them off. I know I look like..." She gestured helplessly at herself. "I know how I look. And I thought when you saw this coat, you thought I'd what? Care." Daniel turned to face her fully. "Emma, do you know what I noticed about you? Not your coat. The way you laugh at bad jokes. The way you remember the regulars, names at the center and ask about their kids. The way you fold napkins into swans when you're nervous. That's who you are, not what you're wearing." Emma felt the tears she'd been holding back start to fall. "Most people don't see it that way. Then most people are idiots," Daniel said, and the certainty in his voice made her laugh through her tears. The train rumbled on through the dark tunnels. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Emma warm for the first time in hours, Daniel apparently content despite the cold. "Keep it," he said suddenly. "What? The coat? Keep it. I have others." "Daniel, I can't." "You can. And you will. Because it's just a coat, Emma. It's fabric and buttons. It's not a statement about your worth or my superiority. It's just warmth, and you need it more than I do right now. That's all." Emma looked down at the coat, running her fingers over its perfect seams, its real buttons. She thought about all the times she'd felt invisible, all the moments she'd been dismissed or pitied or ignored. And here was this man, offering her something without making her feel small for needing it. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome," he said. "Now, about that coffee. Are you free Saturday?" She looked up at him, this man sitting in a cold subway car in just his sweater, smiling at her like she was exactly who he'd hoped she'd be. "Yeah," Emma said, smiling back. "I'm free." As the train pulled into her stop, Emma stood, still wrapped in Daniel's coat. Before she stepped off, she turned back to him. "Daniel, why did you really keep coming back to the community center?" He grinned. "Because there was this girl there who made terrible soup puns and had the kindest smile I'd ever seen. And I wanted to know if she was as wonderful as she seemed." "And she's better," he said. The doors closed between them, and Emma stood on the platform watching the train disappear into the tunnel. She pulled Daniel's coat tighter around her shoulders and walked toward the exit, her steps lighter than they'd been in months. She'd worn shame like a second skin for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen, truly seen, by someone who looked past surfaces to the person underneath. Daniel hadn't saved her. He'd simply reminded her that kindness still existed in the world, that small gestures could carry enormous meaning, that sometimes the measure of a person isn't in what they have but in what they're willing to give. The December wind still howled outside the subway station, but Emma barely felt it as she walked home. She was warm now, wrapped not just in a good coat, but in the unexpected grace of human connection, in the quiet revolution of someone choosing kindness over judgment, in the simple radical act of one person seeing another's need and meeting it without ceremony or self-congratulation. Saturday couldn't come soon enough.